Hello there, Biaka desu and welcome to my review of Kuni II. As you see, I'm wearing cat ears to honor our King Evan. He's from a Grimalkin race, and actually it's a bit confusing because he's the only Grimalkin that I see with human appearance. Well, but let's think about that later on. This review will, of course, have spoilers like many of my reviews, but I feel like this one will mostly be a comparison between this second game and the first Ni no Kuni. Because, as you know, and if you haven't checked it out, you can always go see my first review about Ni no Kuni, where I made some comments about the game, but I also made a comparison and I showed some references that they do of other Studio Ghibli's movies. And from what I know, I don't know, I didn't see in the credits, I can later on check that out, but I don't think this one was made by the same team that made the first one. So I don't think it was made from people who directly work on Studios Ghibli, although they did keep the art style for the second game. What I can say is that Jo Hisashi is still the composer for the soundtrack, and the soundtrack is still amazing. For anyone that has seen my stream, because I streamed the whole game in my Twitch channel, sometimes I would just stop and listen to the soundtrack because the soundtrack, just as in the first game, is wonderful, and the theme is the same, although this time is arranged for a bigger orchestra and a much more imponent chorus. About the game in itself, this game is really different from the first one. So you start out with King Evan and Roland. Roland is the character that comes from another world, and it's actually kind of weird because you in the first one you saw Oliver coming from his world to this fantasy world without changing his appearance. But Roland, he changed his appearance because not in the clothes that he wears, but when he travels to the fantasy world, he becomes younger. And I don't know why that occurs. Maybe it's something connected to his soulmate, but that doesn't make sense because he would be similar in the other world too. I don't know, it's kind of confusing. And in this game, you don't have the mechanic of being able to visit Roland's world. So, you know that Roland is president. I don't know of which country, I don't remember, I don't know if they actually confirmed that, but he's president in his world, and he is suddenly called to this fantasy world, and he will actually guide Evan in becoming a full-fledged king. And you also will meet the rest of the characters. So in the first game, you only have Oliver, and the characters that you could have on your team were, let me see if I remember the names, Ezer, the harpist, and I already don't remember the name of the adult that was with him because they were basically a team of kids, and then you had the adult who stole things. And here the team is much bigger. So you have Roland, you have King Evan, which are the main characters of this game, and then you have Tani, you have I forgot, it's Banu. I know he has a small name like Tani. Batu. And you have also the magician for the Queen Nerea, which was... It's really difficult to memorize the names in these games because they don't call that name in Japanese, so I heard the Japanese voice acting, and you only see the name written. So it was Linder, the magician that worked for Queen Nerea, and I'm forgetting the other girl of the team, which was an engineer. Well, I hope that I remember after. But just as in the first game, you only fight with a team of 3, so instead of having the same 3 all the time, like in the first game, in this one you have a team of 3 that you can pick whoever you want. I must say that most of the time I was playing with King Evan and Roland. For me, those were obligatory in my team. And then I also had the engineer that I'm not remembering the name. I'm really sorry. And because she was the last one to join the team, and therefore her level was superior to all the others. One thing that I must say about this game is that I don't feel like the characters are developed enough. So, in the first game, I felt like the story was too childish. I criticized that in my review because the story is this boy traveling to another world in hopes that he can save his mother, and all the story, the villains and everything, you felt like they were childish in all the plot, and the problems that they faced, although emotional, were also a little bit childish. And in the second game, one thing that I like is that the story is much more mature. But at the same time, I feel like the characters were much more developed in the first one than in the second one, because they are so focused on the evil that's everywhere, the king's makers going wild, the kings in every single kingdom kind of harassing their people, and King Evan's just going from one kingdom to another, not only to join forces, but also to solve these problems. And although the story is much more adult in that sense, I feel like the characters are really underdeveloped. And I really want to like the characters, but except for King Evan and Roland, I feel like the other characters are lacking in, even though I like their designs and some of the story that I learned about them, I feel like it isn't enough. One thing that I must say that this game probably has better than the other game is the ending. Although I don't feel like it's a perfect ending. So in the first game, I felt like the ending was really abrupt. So you don't see Oliver saying goodbye to any of his partners. He just goes back to his world, and you don't really know what happens after that. And with Roland, at least, when he returns to his world, you have the time to see him saying goodbye to King Evan. I would also have liked to see him say goodbye to the other characters, but I guess King Evan is the one that he really connected. And you have this really strong goodbye between the two of them, and he then returns to his world and he tries to apply what he did with Evan in the fantasy world. And it was really interesting. I also feel like I wanted to see more, what else they could show, but it's a nice ending, it's a nice conclusion for the game. So, about the story. So, you have King Evan basically having his life threatened by Mossinger. Mossinger was the advisor for his father, the king of Ding Dong Dell. So Ding Dong Dell is the only place I recognize from the first game, because it's exactly the same city that you see in the first game. Although in the second game it's much more developed and bigger, but it's the same city. And of course, Ding Dong Dell was always governed by Grimalkin kings. And then you have Mossinger. Mossinger is the mouse that was advisor to the king, and he decides to take the throne to himself. And Evan escapes with the help of Roland. He also, right at the beginning, loses someone dear to him. And they decide to found a new kingdom, the Evermore Kingdom. And this is also a reference to the first game, and they decide this name based on books that they have access to. And Roland will then help Evan to build his kingdom, collect allies, and Evan decides that he wants to bring all the kingdoms together because he read about that in one book, that King Ferdinand was able to do this, and he decides to gather all kingdoms in one unity so they can fight back the evil, and the evil is in the form of Doloran. So Doloran is the villain of this game, and you don't have any other villain. That's in the first game you have other steps for the villain, but Doloran is the main villain of this game. And that's basically it. You just go with Evan and Roland, kingdom to kingdom, solving problems, fighting monsters, and in the end you are able to build ever more and just bring union to all the kingdoms. The battle against Doloran was just what I expected, because throughout the game you have only one question in your head, that is, who is Roland, who is his soulmate in this fantasy world? Because in the first game, Ni no Kuni is supposed to be about these two worlds side by side, and all people have soulmates. That is why in the first game Oliver would travel between worlds so he could help soulmates in whichever world was needed. In here they don't mention it in anywhere. They don't mention this plot anywhere, but as I have played the first game, I was always expecting what they would say Roland's soulmate would be, and it was just as I expected. So in the first game, Oliver's soulmate was not the final villain, but that executioner that he defeated. And here it's exactly the same plot twist. Roland is actually the soulmate of Doloran, the villain. And that was so expected. I was always thinking, please, don't do the same plot twist, and they did it. And it's one critique that I would do, but I understand. I mean, who would be his soulmate? I actually for a while suspected that it would be the curious boy with whom Evan talks in his dreams, but the revelation of his identity was actually pretty underwhelming, because you have this boy always helping him just for you to discover that he's actually King Ferdinand and he travels through time, and it was too much and it didn't make any sense, and I felt like it was really underwhelming, this revelation. Also, you have lots of references to the first game. When Evan takes the Trials of Knowledge to be able to have his Kingsmaker, the trials are about the story of the first game, except instead of fighting the villain of the first game, in the story that Evan is reconstructing, they fight a dragon. Don't know why, but it is what it is. And for example, Lofty, Evan's Kingsmaker, is actually one of the fairies that you can see in the first game. And if I'm not mistaken, it's one of the fairies that was friends with Drippy and that you can meet through the story. I'm not sure of this, but I can confirm it. And you have lots of references. You also find the rabbit that was in one of your side quests in the first game, the conductor. So I actually played a bit because I feel like the conductor is a DLC for this second game. And although I was able to do the main mission for him, after you finish it you have to open an inn so you can visit his world at any time in your kingdom. And those fights are really hard because the DLC content says that you are able to reach until level 150. That's too much. You need to do so much grind. It was not worth it for me. I tried the DLC stuff. You also have a labyrinth to find some lost treasure. I don't even remember what it was because it was of a pirate, I think. Uh, it's just grind. It's just you going through mazes, trying to find objects. And also at the end of the game, I really try to do all the side quests. Just like in the first game, I try to do all the side quests because I find them pretty addicting. You also have the Taskmaster here, which was in the Swift Solutions in the first game, but he doesn't give you side quests. He just gives you errands, so you can gain experience and lose items, basically. Uh, he only gives you, I think, but it's interesting because he can point you to citizens that can join your kingdom, and I was actually able to develop my kingdom until it's a higher level and get all the citizens, because for you to upgrade your kingdom to level 4 you need all the citizens. It would actually be kind of fun, but I don't know if I have time for that, to do like a time lapse of this time I spent trying to develop my kingdom. And that's it. You don't really need to play the first game to play the second one, but it is interesting to do so because you can understand the various references that they throw at you. Uh, Is it necessary? No, you can perfectly play the Kuni II without having played the first one because the mechanics are nothing alike. The way you fight has nothing to do one thing with another. You can't use magic freely because magic was the main focus of the first game. You were trying that Oliver learned all the spells and everything. You also have the same spells. They even reference the wizard companion, but it's just as Easter eggs. You don't really do much with that. And one thing that I can say is really develop your kingdom, because most people may think, ah, yes, I have this like kingdom simulator that I can do as an extra for the story. No, it's not an extra. If you want to have your magic maxed out, if you want to have good armor, good weapons, if you want to go through mazes and have other stuff really maxed out and be easy to do skirmishes, you really need to develop your kingdom and do the research. This is really necessary so your gameplay can be easier. Speaking of skirmishes, that's my peeve in this game, because I really avoided skirmishes until the last minute. Unless it was needed by the story itself, skirmishes, they are boring, they are sometimes difficult to do, you really need to level up. I had a friend that told me that you just pick a really high level skirmish and even if you don't win, you gain the experience. But I tried that and the level really goes up slowly, so I didn't see any advantage. I was able to do most skirmishes, so I think it's more or less easy if you watch the weak and strong types. But really, try to do the skirmishes as much as you can, because at least at the end of the game you have one obligatory skirmish that you have to do. So if you can use the side quest to do that, try to level up your teams and really do the research in your kingdom, because that will help a lot with the skirmishes. And basically that's it. I think that leveling up your kingdom and doing all the research available will really help in the gameplay. Also, the battles are really easy to do, because in the first game you had this kind of hack and slash with a mixture of turn-based gameplay, because you had set amount of time to do your actions. And in this one, it's just pure hack and slash. So you just have to manage your hack and slash. You dodge sometimes, attack, and use the powerful abilities that you have with each weapon, because you can equip up to 3 weapons. And really be attentive about your equipment, about your weapons, because sometimes I was having some difficulty doing the grind, and it was not because I was under leveled, but because I didn't update my equipment. So be mindful of that. Also be mindful of the higgledies that you use, because they are actually really fun to use in battle, and they help a lot because you only have 3 members and they have elemental attacks that will really help you. I always had one cure higgledy that would also sometimes spam cure, so it was really helpful. And basically that's it. I feel like this game doesn't have Studio Ghibli's references. They only have references to the first game, which are nice. But as I said, you don't need to play the first one to play this one. Playing the first will be a nice addition to some things that they refer. And that's basically it. So I hope you enjoyed. Please listen to the soundtrack, because just as in the first game, the soundtrack is marvelous. I really like the voice acting too. As always, I feel like it's a shame that they don't have full voice acting throughout the game. My favorite character is without a doubt Roland. I really enjoyed Roland, although I would wish I would know more about him. And as for the DLC content, basically the DLC content is grind. And although I did try a bit of the DLC content, I didn't feel like it was worth it to really waste time, so I technically didn't finish the DLCs. But I really had fun with the game. I spent 80 hours on it. 50 of them was to do the main story and get distracted by the side quests. So I really recommend the game. It's a really good RPG, really fun, with really nice visuals. So I really recommend it. And remember, share with me your favorite characters, your favorite moments of this game. Tell me if you would want to play. If you like this content, please like, share, subscribe, whatever you want to do. And I will see you in the next review. Bye bye!